What's up everyone, it's Neon Velocity and I'm back with another Gears 5 tutorial, and in today's video we're going to be focusing on Master Escape, the Gatekeepers, which is releasing September 15th. And with that, it's a very unique hive to play, as there's going to be tons of bosses, which we'll go into more of that as we go into the live footage and kind of the strategy and the hows and the whys. But first and foremost, with every hive, if you've been on my channel, you know that I like to go over the skill card. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. The first class that we want to focus on is Keegan. The reason for playing Keegan is that he has the ability to be a good boss killer, to make sure that the bosses never really start to gain any life, or making sure that they're just losing health constantly through his shredder card. So anytime that Keegan uses an explosive weapon, such as a boom shot, drop shot, or grenades, for example, there's going to be bleeding damage over time, which is extremely critical to make sure that you're killing these bosses as fast as you possibly can. The other part of this skill card setup is the recharge bounty, which allows Keegan to mark enemies, and whether Keegan or your allies, your squad mates, actually make the kill, the resupply ultimate cooldown is reduced, which is critical because resupply is really beneficial as long as you're in the venom, which we'll go into more here in just a moment. Grenade pouch. Grenade pouch is actually not exactly the best skill card to use on this hive. However, I do find it useful because of the fact that there are times where you won't be able to directly impact a boss with an explosive weapon because you may be out of ammo, and so having an increased amount of grenades is extremely useful. Venom boost, which allows Keegan to get kills in the venom and have his resupply cooldown reduced. Now, if I remember correctly, this only works if Keegan is actually the one to make the kill on a marked enemy, so it's a double whammy. Recharge bounty will cool down, and then venom boost will work in tandem with it, so the resupply cooldown could go very quickly if the enemies are getting killed. And then also venom explosive resupply. This allows Keegan to resupply his explosive weapons, so this could be again the drop shot, boom shot, salvo, those type of particular weapons while in the venom. Now, I'm not saying that these are the best cards, but I feel very comfortable with the 5 cards used here. However, you could definitely swap out grenade pouch for something else. That is just my tidbit as Keegan, which in this video you'll see me playing as Keegan. The second class is Fahz, and Fahz is actually the most universal class for this particular hive. It doesn't matter what other classes you have. If you don't have Fahz, I can assure you it's not going to go well. I'm not saying you can't master it, but it will make it a lot harder. Fahz has become extremely popular and overpowered in a way as of Operation 3 and obviously into Operation 4, but there is going to be a patch coming soon where he does get nerfed a little bit if it hasn't already taken effect. But with that stated, the 5 skill cards that you're going to want to use are long shot handling, exploit weakness, explosive critical hit, ambush, and modified long shot. And if you've played Fahz, or if you're not familiar with Fahz, is basically the gist is to get as many headshot kills as possible and use the sniper. Having long shot handling is extremely useful, especially when using X-ray, because anytime that you get a critical kill, meaning you hit them in the head and you kill them, you automatically have a chance to reload your long shot, which means more use out of your X-ray. Exploit weakness just allows, again, Fahz to have increased critical damage. Anytime you hit the head of an enemy with the sniper, you're gonna have increased critical damage, which is nice because that it works in tandem with the next card and the previous card, explosive critical hit, where any critical hit causes a massive amount of damage, but it also causes splash damage to opposing enemies, so it's an area of effect. Ambush is actually the most best card, and for some reason it's actually the easiest card to obtain and get to level 6. Is basically you get another increased critical damage to targets above a certain threshold of life, and in this case I'm getting 140% critical damage on top of the 50% increased critical damage right then and there of enemies over 90% health. So right there alone, with exploit weakness and ambush, my Fahz, if I was to play as Fahz, I would be getting 190% critical damage on top of the base critical damage, and then also modified long shot, which increases the damage. So there's just a ton of critical damage happening, and the goal is to use the modified long shot, or the long shot in particular, and just make sure that you're getting headshots as Fahz. The third class is Cole, and the reason for playing Cole is because of his damage reduction. This is one of my favorite builds. However, we have removed one of the cards to put in All the Glory, which I'll go into here. Actually, I'll go first with All the Glory, but All the Glory basically allows enemies that are burned, anytime that you tackle them and explode them, that they will explode and deal 20%, or depending on what level you are. For mine, it's 20% HP and damage. So basically Cole's amount of life and damage. So it could be a lot or it could be little to none. But usually with Cole, as long as you're running these cards, you're going to have a high damage reduction, which means you're going to have a lot of life and be able to do a lot of damage with Torch Tackle. The second card is Inner Fire, which just allows Cole to have 50% damage resistance to damage when the train, his ultimate ability, is active. That's a lot of damage reduction right out of the gate, so it doesn't matter if it's explosive in the back, in front, to the side, doesn't matter what weapon it is, it's 50%. The third skill card is going to be Torch Tackle, and basically, as I kind of said with All the Glory, anytime that Cole tackles an enemy, they are burned, and when they are burned, they get tackled again, they do 250% damage additional. So it's a lot of damage actually being done to burning enemies. And then of course with All the Glory, if you kill them, they explode, which means more damage to surrounding enemies, but it also hurts your teammates. I forgot to mention that, so make sure that you're careful when using All the Glory. Perk Up is the fourth skill card, and Perk Up is a great card. It's just an all-around great card actually. It gives you increased max health and regeneration speed, meaning you can stay alive a lot faster, and you get 50% more life at level 5, which is a lot. The last card is Damage Dash, and ultimately, again, going back to damage resistance, making sure that you're not taking as much damage as possible, even though you're being extremely mobile and active. The goal is to make sure that you keep moving, keep tackling, and take as much damage, and keep the damage away from Fahz and Keegan. So in this particular hive, you're going to have a few mutators that are new. However, some are similar or ones that we've seen before. Tougher enemies, tougher gatekeepers, stronger gatekeepers, stronger enemies, poison drones, and the regen penalty, and vampiric gatekeepers as well. So again, the bosses are going to be extremely difficult in this hive. However, with this particular build and class setup, I do believe that we'll have much success. So usually I like to go over the what is all to be done before the actual hive starts, and so now that we've covered that, let's actually kind of get into it. So I actually skipped a little bit of the first half of this, but basically you just go up a few set of stairs and grab a bunch of ammo and then come out. And the key is to allow Fahz to gather as much ammo as he possibly can, as he's the one doing a lot of the damage. So when doing this, again, this is a live recording of the gameplay after the fact, of course, but it is as live as it can. There's no script to this, so I'm just going to be going over kind of the hows and the whys and what to expect here. But really the goal is to have Keegan and Cole kind of sit back at the start, because Keegan is not really able to do much right out of the gate because he doesn't have any explosive ammo, and Cole really needs to have his train ability, his ultimate ability, available for that high damage reduction. Now it doesn't mean he's useless, because he can definitely torch tackle and then explode an enemy, as shown multiple times throughout this hive. The other piece of it is allowing Fahz to use his sniper and just kill as many of the scions as possible. So there's going to be ice scions, and I also believe there could be Moltres scions, so you just have to be careful. And the juvies allow Cole and Keegan to do a lot of the damage to make sure that they're dying. So again, I'm playing as Keegan, but my goal here is just to kind of sit back and be as careful as possible. And I'm not exactly the best at that, because I'm being overly aggressive, and basically we're really counting on Fahz to get us through this first part. So the venom is actually starting to creep up on us a little bit, but as long as Fahz keeps handling business, we'll be fine. Now, if your teammates go down, just make sure that you're being careful. And of course, Cole is going to be the big damage dealer. You'll see me trying at times to get a few cheap kills, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just make sure that you're 100% comfortable and feeling like you're definitely gonna get those kills, and go for the easy executions by using the triple melee, which usually ends up in a knife execution. Now, the other pieces of information that I want to note is that it's very selective, and you need to be very careful when using your X-ray ability as Fahz. Now, I haven't really gone over that too much just yet, but it's extremely beneficial if Fahz uses his X-rays only at particular times during this hive, and allowing Keegan to use his resupply only while in the venom, assuming that he has an explosive ammo. And Cole will never use his ultimate ability because you want that high damage reduction, as we talked about earlier in this video. So when we come up into this next room, there's going to be more ammo boxes. Allow Fahz to get as much as he needs. Keegan can kind of just skip on down and get as much as he wants. But before, there was poppers that Keegan has the ability to grab frag grenades. And so make sure that you grab those frag grenades or get them from your teammates, and get the ammo pouches that are explosive later on. This way it allows you to have frag grenades. So at this point you can see that there's enemies dying, and the reason for that is that Fahz actually went ahead and activated his X-ray ability and started headshotting enemies in the next room to make it much easier on us when we go into this room. So in this particular room, you're going to have a left and a right area. This is a setup that's been fairly familiar throughout Escape tiles. We've seen this in Operation 1. I can't exactly remember what the hive was, but it's a familiar layout. Basically, you can go left and you'll run into some enemies, or you go right and you run into some enemies. The key here is just to, again, allow Fahz to use his sniper and get as many headshots as possible. And by this point, Cole should starting to get close, if not already have his ultimate ability, which allows him to become beneficial, as he'll be able to start using his torch tackle and all the glory to explode up enemies. Now in this room, I also forgot to mention that there are sentinels and guardians in here that will drop the salvos, and those salvos is what Keegan's going to want to have, as Keegan really does well with explosive ammo, as we discussed earlier. So make sure that you grab that as Keegan and keep it with you, and don't go crazy with it, because you will be the boss slayer or help with the boss slaying. Now ultimately Fahz is the one that does a lot of the killing, but your job is to make sure that they're not being able to rejuvenate their health as fast as they possibly can. So after this room, you're going to make it into the safe room, and this first part is actually the easiest part of the whole video, and of this tutorial as well. It's basically, you know, once you get past this, you're already nearly halfway done with the hive, but the hard parts haven't began just yet. At this point, everybody should have their ultimates ready to go, and we're just going to kind of speed through this. I'm going to let this go for a little bit. I'm not going to speak too much. I'm just going to let this play out until we open up and get into the next set of area. So once the gate finally opens here, there's going to be tons of ammo and explosive ammo, and as Keegan, you should still have a frag grenade, so the explosive ammo pouches will be yours to grab. Just make sure you grab them. There should be one or two, and you just want to grab those to ensure that you have all the grenades that you possibly can, which is why we chose to take the grenade pouch skill card earlier. And when you go down this, just make sure that you throw the salvo down. This will allow you the ability to keep the salvo and bring it throughout the next part of the hive. So up here, we're going to stall out just a little bit. We know that it's a matriarch, which is not exactly the best situation. And so why this is bad is because killing the matriarch, you can only hit it in the back, and that's the only way to eliminate the matriarch. So you got to be very precise with what we're trying to do here and make sure that it works. So here again, you know, Fahz is going to stay back as far as he possibly can and just headshot as many enemies as he can. And the reason for that is because he wants to give that area of effect damage through his explosive critical hits. Now as Keegan, my job is to focus on this matriarch, and I just kind of spam these salvos as best as I possibly can to ensure that I'm killing the matriarch and keeping damage. And you can see that I'm doing about 712 damage per hit. Now right here I did a terrible job because I thought the venom was closer, and I used my resupply, which was a terrible idea because I'm not in the venom, which means that explosives are not going to recharge on that salvo, so I did mess that up pretty bad. But instead I just went ahead and threw 2 grenades to make sure that the matriarch kept bleeding and taking damage, and I eventually died. But then Ghost of Delta, a great moderator on the Gears of War forums, actually went ahead and got the shot in the back and killed the matriarch, so the matriarch is now handled. So now at this point we have all those enemies that we still had from earlier. We had a ton of juvies, and that is where our Cole is going to go and uses all the glory, because he is melee resistance through the roof right now with all his skills cards being active, because all his ultimate abilities, which is the train, is available. So here, if you do get nervous, make sure that you kill the juvies as quick as possible, because usually, if you haven't noticed, when a juvie downs you or a teammate, they almost instantly execute you, and if they execute you, then, well, you should know that it's game over at this point. Now in this room there is going to be a weapons locker and a boom shot, but there's also more ammo crates in here as well. So as Keegan, I'm here to grab the boom shot, and if I can, I'll use the weapons locker to ensure that my salvo gets some ammo capacity. But if not, the boom shot should do the trick. But again, you want to make sure that you get as much explosive ammo on you as possible. Now what's also useful here that I didn't mention earlier was that there's actually a torque bow as well. So you're going to have the boom shot and the torque bow and the salvo, and this is super critical because all of them are explosive ammos, and there's also the explosive ammo pouch in here for you to grab, which will replenish your grenades, and of course give you some additional ammo for your torque bow, because when I picked it up it had 0, so I believe it doesn't have many torque bow shots in it at all. Now when we move up into this next room with the door, Fahz actually went ahead and activated his ultimate ability to ensure that he was able to kill as many enemies that were close to him as possible, and then also damage the enemies that are further closer to the swarm map, because now you're at the final boss. Now when earlier I forgot, and I apologize, is that when you're fighting off the matriarch, is that it could also be a snatcher, so it is interchangeable for which boss you get. Now here, Fahz is just hitting some headshots on him as best as he possibly could after he killed those enemies, but I'm actually using the torque bow to try to land any amount of shots on them, in particular the Swarmac, to make sure that he's bleeding out and taking some damage consistently. As Cole, your job is to move forward and to just kill off the juvies or anybody that's starting to get close. And I'm not gonna lie, I really believe that this part right here is where the majority of people that play Escape will fail this Hive. I believe the first 2 parts are fairly simplistic as long as you're doing what we mentioned up in the guide before. However, right here, you know, as Cole, your job is to stay alive as best as you possibly can, because if the juvies do get by, it is going to be a hard day. And that's where you can see that Fahz right now is having to use his knife and also his bulltalk to kill the enemies nearby. Cole is actually just going to run from the left side to the right side. We haven't moved up in my camera screen that far enough just yet, and the reason for that is because I cannot move up, I will die, and I need to be in the explosive or in the venom so I can get my explosive resupply to work, because right now I don't have any shots in anything, which is not good, but that's okay because the Swarmac is still taking damage and not rejuvenating any life, while Cole is actually taking care of business by ensuring that all the juvies are dying. So eventually you can go ahead and just use your explosive resupply and spam them. You can see that I'm going to do that because I'm going to continue to get ammo on these juvies. Now here at the left side of me, there's a little area, the little room with a drop down, and there will be enemies that can spawn, and they will spawn there and come after you. So just make sure that you're being aware that those enemies can come through, and as the Swarmer starts coming up, you just rain pain with your salvo on the Swarmac, because it's going to do a lot of damage. The Swarmac does take a lot of damage to kill, though I don't know exact numbers, but he does have a lot of life. Eventually the Swarmac's going to get pissed off enough, and you can kind of see he's just starting to move around a lot, whether it's left, right, and shooting off his little rocket launchers, grenades. And I'm just going to try to, again, just use my torque bow and my boom shot and frags to inflict damage on the swarm max to keep him going. And using grenades is actually useful because they do a lot of damage, so you can see that he's starting to take a lot of damage here. So as Cole, he's just again rotating between the left or right side. Fahz is actually using his X-ray ability and going back to hide to make sure that he doesn't die, and doing as much damage as he can in the head. And you can see, if you look closely, that the Swarm Max life is taking quite a bit of damage, and I've actually been able to get my resupply, which is great because I'll be able to use these weapons as we move to the end of this hive. So at this point, we know that the doors are closing, or they're starting to close. And I made a careless mistake and got down, and you can see why Cole is useful, because Cole was able to survive all of this. At this point, I'm kind of in a panic and I want to get out, and I actually fell again, and Cole has to come out and actually open the gate. So I apologize, I thought the gate was closing, but it was not. Fahz is down and it's just Cole, and so Cole's having to literally run around as best as he could, whereas I'm just trying to inflict damage on the Swarm Mac as best as I can. And I'm out the door is closing, and he's so close to being dead, and eventually you're gonna see that the Swarm Mac will die, but he actually makes it out onto the helipad, which is not good. And so Ghost of Delta somehow gets the actual melee kill on the Brumac, but it really wasn't. It was a sniper shot. So just know that once he gets low enough on health, if you start popping those blisters, he will die. And once you kill the matriarch and you're out on the helipad, all you're gonna have is just some poppers and some juvies coming. So if you're Keegan, just throw down that explosive resupply and use your grenades, or not your grenades, but your turbo and your boom shot to ensure that you kill them as best as you can. And then Cole can just use his all the glory to deflect anybody else that comes, because again, he's not using his ultimate ability. But in reality, that's how you beat this hive. I know that this video wasn't the best video that I wanted to do, because I wanted to get this out as quick as I can, and it is late. But make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and click the notification bell icon to make sure that you're getting the latest uploads to the channel. Be sure to check out gearsinsight.com, as there will be a physical write-up on this video as well. And until next time, peace.